The rain pelted against the windows of Mercy Hospital like tiny fists demanding entry. I'd been on my feet for 16 hours straight, my hospital scrubs clinging to my skin, the antiseptic smell burning my nostrils even after all these years. 3 emergency surgeries, 2 cardiac arrests, and a child with pneumonia who reminded me too much of my brother when we were kids. My shoulders ached, as if someone had replaced my muscles with concrete. "Olivia, you need to go home," Dr. Patel said. Her dark eyes narrowed with concern as she scanned my face. "You look like you're about to collapse." I forced a smile. "Just one more patient chart to update, and I'll be out of here." The truth was, I didn't mind staying. My studio apartment would be cold and empty, bills scattered across the kitchen counter like fallen leaves. Dad's medical debt collectors would have left another voicemail, their voices syrupy sweet while threatening to take what little I had left. At least here, in the fluorescent glow of the hospital, I was someone who mattered. I finished my notes and dragged myself toward the staff exit, pushing through the heavy door into the ambulance bay. The rain had eased to a gentle mist that kissed my face. I pulled my thin jacket tighter around my shoulders and started the 15-minute walk to my apartment, passing the employee parking lot where I couldn't afford to keep a car. That's when I noticed the black Bentley. It sat like a panther ready to pounce, gleaming under the streetlights despite the rain, its windows tinted so dark they seemed to absorb the night. It was parked in the ambulance-only zone, but no one had dared to ticket it or tow it away. Something about it made my skin prickle with unease. As I walked past, the back door opened. I glimpsed a leather interior that probably cost more than my yearly salary. A man stepped out, his movements fluid and deliberate like a dancer, or a predator. The streetlight caught his profile, strong jaw, straight nose, dark hair swept back from his forehead. He wore a charcoal suit that seemed molded to his broad shoulders, the fabric so fine it appeared to capture and release light with each breath he took. I quickened my pace, clutching my bag closer to my body. In this neighborhood, men who looked like that, who owned cars like that, were either lost or looking for trouble. "Nurse Bedford?" His voice rolled like distant thunder, soft yet commanding enough to freeze me in place. I turned slowly, my exhaustion momentarily forgotten. "Do I know you?" He approached with measured steps, hands in his pockets, casual yet calculated. Now I could see his eyes, the color of whiskey held up to firelight. They assessed me with an intensity that made me feel like I was simultaneously being seen and dissected. Up close, I noticed a faint scar curving along his left cheekbone, the only imperfection in an otherwise flawless face. "No," he said, his mouth curving into something that wasn't quite a smile. "But I know you. Olivia Bedford, 27, emergency room nurse, graduated top of your class despite working 2 jobs. My heart skittered like a startled rabbit. Who are you?" "Adrian Russo." He extended a hand that I didn't take. If the rejection bothered him, he didn't show it. "I have a proposition for you." "It's midnight, Mr. Russo. Whatever you're selling, I'm not buying." I started to turn away. "It's about your father's debt." The words snagged me like a hook. I stopped, my breath catching. "What do you know about my father?" "I know he left you with $300,000 in medical debt when he died. I know the collectors are threatening to garnish your wages." He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something woodsy and expensive that reminded me of forests I'd never visited. "I can make that go away." Warning bells clanged in my head. Men like him didn't offer help without expecting something in return. "Why would you do that?" "I need a private nurse for my sister. She was injured in an accident. She requires discreet, round-the-clock care for a few weeks." His eyes never left mine. "The pay is excellent. Enough to clear your father's debt and start fresh. If you need a private nurse, there are agencies. I need someone I can trust." His voice hardened at the edges. Someone without connections who might ask uncomfortable questions. I should have walked away. Every instinct screamed to run. But exhaustion and desperation clouded my judgment. 3 years of drowning in debt, of eating ramen while working 60-hour weeks. of watching the interest compound faster than I could make payments. What kind of injury are we talking about? Something flickered in his eyes. Approval, perhaps. Gunshot wound to the abdomen. She's stable but needs monitoring. You'd stay at my estate until she recovers, and if I say no? His expression didn't change, but the temperature around us seemed to drop 10 degrees. Then you walk away and continue your life. But the offer expires tonight. I looked at the Bentley, then back at the hospital where I'd spend another 16 hours tomorrow for barely enough money to cover my rent. I need to think about it. Of course. He reached into his jacket and produced a business card, thick and cream-colored with just a phone number embossed in black. You have 1 hour. Before I could respond, his driver, a mountain of a man I hadn't noticed until now, opened the car door. Adrian Russo slid inside with graceful economy, the door closing with a soft thud that somehow sounded final. I stood there in the misty rain, the card heavy between my fingers, as the Bentley pulled away. My mind raced with possibilities, none of them good. Private nurse for a gunshot wound that wasn't being treated in a hospital? Either his sister was wanted by the police, or he was involved in something illegal. Probably both. But the debt collectors had threatened to come after my meager savings next. The thought of losing the emergency fund I'd scraped together penny by penny made me physically ill. I could report him to the police. But what would I say? A rich man offered me a job? They'd laugh me out of the station. I walked home in a daze, the card burning a hole in my pocket. My apartment was as cold and empty as I'd anticipated. Bills spread across the counter, the red final notice stamp like a scream on the top envelope. I picked up my phone and stared at it, my finger hovering over the number on the card. Just as I was about to dial, my phone rang. Unknown number. Your hour isn't up yet, I said after answering. Adrian Russo's laugh was soft and dangerous. Time is a luxury I rarely afford others, Ms. Bedford. Have you decided? How much? I asked bluntly. $10,000 per week plus expenses. The debt disappears regardless of your service length. My breath caught. That was more money than I'd make in 3 months at the hospital, and all I have to do is care for your sister? Yes. The word hung between us, simple yet laden with unspoken complications. When would I start? Tonight. I closed my eyes. I need to pack. Everything will be provided. Of course it would be. Men like him didn't leave details to chance. I need to inform the hospital, already taken care of. They believe you've taken a family emergency leave. A chill crawled up my spine. How long had he been watching me, planning this? Mr. Russo, I don't even know where I'm going. My driver is outside your building. I crossed to the window and pushed aside the thin curtain. The black Bentley sat at the curb like a patient predator. The same mountain of a man stood beside it, his gaze fixed on my third-floor window. He didn't wave or acknowledge that he saw me, but I knew he did. This was madness, pure insanity. Yet I found myself saying, I'll be down in 5 minutes. Wise choice, Ms. Bedford. The line went dead. I changed into jeans and a sweater, stuffed my toothbrush and a change of underwear into my purse, then scribbled a quick note for my neighbor in case. In case what? In case I never came back? I shook the thought away and left the note on my kitchen counter. The burly driver opened the car door as I approached. The back seat was empty. Adrian Russo wasn't inside. Instead, there was a blindfold lying on the leather seat. Mr. Russo requires discretion regarding the location of his estate, the driver said, his voice surprisingly gentle for a man his size. I hesitated. 1 foot on the curb, 1 inside the car. This was my last chance to turn back, to run inside and lock my door, to call the police and report something, anything. Instead, I slid into the seat and picked up the blindfold. The silk was cool against my fingers as I tied it around my eyes, plunging myself into darkness. The car moved smoothly through the night. I tried to keep track of turns, right, left, straight, for what felt like 20 minutes, another right, but soon lost my bearings. The motion and exhaustion lulled me into a half-sleep, my head nodding forward before jerking back up. I was startled fully awake when the car stopped and the door opened. A hand, large but gentle, helped me out. 5 steps up, the driver murmured. I counted the steps beneath my feet, feeling stone, then heard the sound of massive doors opening. The air changed, warmer, scented with something floral and exotic. My blindfold was removed, and I blinked against the sudden light. The entryway was cavernous, with marble floors and a curved staircase that swept up to a second floor. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow prisms across cream-colored walls adorned with paintings I was certain were originals. It was like stepping into a museum, or a palace from another century. Adrian Russo stood at the foot of the stairs, his suit jacket discarded, the sleeves of his white shirt rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle. He looked both more relaxed and more dangerous in his own domain. "Welcome to my home, Ms. Bedford." He gestured expansively. "I trust the journey wasn't too uncomfortable." "The blindfold was a bit much," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. His mouth quirked upward. "Necessary precautions. You'll understand why soon enough." He started up the stairs, clearly expecting me to follow. "I'll show you to my sister now. She's been sedated but should be waking soon." I followed him up the staircase, my hand trailing along a banister smooth from generations of similar touches. The second floor opened into a long hallway with doors on either side. Adrian moved with purpose to the third door on the right, and paused, his hand on the knob. "Before we enter," he said, his voice lowered, "understand that what you see in this room doesn't leave this house. Ever." His eyes locked with mine, and for the first time, I glimpsed something truly frightening behind them. Not cruelty, but absolute certainty. This was a man accustomed to being obeyed without question. I nodded, my throat suddenly dry. He pushed open the door to reveal a bedroom converted into a medical suite. A hospital bed stood in the center, surrounded by monitors and IV stands. In the bed lay a young woman, perhaps 22 or 23, her skin pale against dark hair spread across the pillow. She was beautiful even in unconsciousness, with the same straight nose and defined cheekbones as her brother. I moved to her side automatically, checking the monitors, assessing her condition with practiced eyes. The wound had been treated professionally. The bandages were precisely applied, the IV properly placed. Someone with medical training had already attended to her. "Who did this?" I asked, lifting the edge of the bandage to examine the stitches. "That's not your concern." Adrian moved to stand at the foot of the bed, his eyes on his sister's face. Something in his expression shifted, softened. It was the first genuine emotion I'd seen from him. "Her name is Sophia. She's all the family I have left." I nodded, continuing my assessment. "The wound looks clean, no signs of infection. When was she injured?" "Yesterday morning." "And the bullet?" "Removed." I looked up at him. "By a doctor?" A ghost of a smile. "By someone with sufficient experience." His gaze hardened again. "Your job is to monitor her, change the dressings, administer antibiotics and pain medication, and alert me immediately of any changes in her condition." He nodded toward a door on the far side of the room. "Those are your quarters. You'll find everything you need there." I followed his gaze to what I assumed was a small adjoining room, probably a former walk-in closet. My gilded cage. "Am I a prisoner here, Mr. Russo?" I asked quietly. He considered me for a long moment. "You're free to leave whenever you wish, Ms. Bedford. But you won't. Because of my father's debt. Because once you walk through these doors, you become part of my world. And in my world, loyalty is rewarded and betrayal." He left the sentence unfinished, but his meaning was crystal clear. As he turned to leave, I called out, "What happened to the last nurse?" Adrian paused at the door, looking back over his shoulder. There wasn't one. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "You're the first person I've ever brought to this house who wasn't family." The door closed behind him with a soft click that echoed in my chest like a cell door slamming shut. I stood in the center of that opulent prison, the unconscious woman my only company, wondering what terrible mistake I'd just made. What I didn't know then, couldn't have known, was that I hadn't just entered Adrian Russo's home. I'd walked straight into his web. I spent that first night checking Sophia's vitals every hour, adjusting her IV drip, and battling my own exhaustion. The room was equipped better than some hospitals I'd worked in. Monitors for heart rate and blood pressure, oxygen tanks, even a portable ultrasound machine tucked discreetly in a cabinet that looked like antique furniture. When Sophia stirred around 3 a.m, I was at her side immediately. Her eyes fluttered open, the same whiskey color as her brother's, and focused on me with confusion. "Who are you?" Her voice was weak but carried the same commanding tone as Adrian's. "I'm Olivia, your nurse." I checked her pulse as I spoke, professional and calm despite my circumstances. "You've been injured. How's your pain level on a scale of 1 to 10? She ignored my question. "Where's Adrian?" "I can call him if you'd like." "No." The word came out sharper than I think she intended, followed by a wince of pain. "Let him sleep. He worries too much." Her eyes, clouded with medication but still keen, studied my face. "You're new." I nodded, adjusting her IV. "I started tonight." A ghost of a smile played across her lips. "Poor you." Before I could ask what she meant, her eyes drifted shut again, pulled under by the sedatives and pain medication. I recorded her brief period of consciousness in the chart Adrian had provided, noting her lucidity and pain response. My own exhaustion was becoming overwhelming. I retreated to the adjoining room. My quarters, as Adrian had called them. Like everything else in this house, it was extravagantly appointed. A queen-sized bed with sheets that felt like liquid silk. A bathroom with a marble shower and soaking tub. A closet filled with clothes in exactly my size. I shivered at that detail. How long had he been watching me before making his approach? I meant to just lie down for a moment, but exhaustion pulled me under into a dreamless sleep. When I woke, sunlight was streaming through windows I hadn't noticed the night before, casting golden patterns across the hardwood floor. For a moment, I forgot where I was. Then reality crashed back. I shot up, horrified that I'd slept longer than the hour I'd intended. Rushing into Sophia's room, I found her still asleep, her vitals stable. The monitor showed her last check had been 30 minutes ago. "I took over when you fell asleep." I whirled around to find Adrian sitting in an armchair in the corner of the room, a tablet in his lap. He wore the same clothes as the night before, making me wonder if he'd slept at all. "I'm sorry," I stammered. "I didn't mean to." He waved away my apology. "You were exhausted. It's why I had your room prepared with sedatives in the air filtration." My blood ran cold. "You drugged me? I ensured you got the rest you needed." He stood, smoothing his shirt. "You're of no use to Sophia if you collapse from exhaustion." I wanted to be angry, but the manipulative logic made a twisted kind of sense. "Don't do that again without my consent." His eyebrow arched slightly, as if surprised by my boldness. "Noted." He moved to Sophia's bedside, his hand gently brushing her forehead. "She woke while you were sleeping, said she was at pain level 7. The clinical precision of his report surprised me. "Did you give her anything?" "No. I waited for you." He stepped back, gesturing for me to proceed. "I defer to your expertise." I checked Sophia's chart, then administered a carefully measured dose of pain medication through her IV. All the while, I felt Adrian's eyes on me, assessing every movement. When I finished, I turned to face him. "She needs her bandages changed, and I'd like to check for signs of infection." He nodded, then shocked me by rolling up his sleeves further and washing his hands in the adjoining bathroom. "I'll assist." Together, we carefully removed Sophia's bandages. The wound was red, but showed no signs of infection. A clean through and through just above her hip that had somehow missed vital organs. As I cleaned and redressed it, Adrian handed me supplies with the efficiency of someone who'd done this many times before. "This isn't the first gunshot wound you've treated," I observed quietly. His eyes met mine. "No." "Or the first one she's received." A muscle in his jaw tightened. "No." I finished securing the fresh bandage and pulled the blanket back over Sophia. "Who are you people, really?" Adrian's expression remained impassive, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "You know exactly who we are, Ms. Bedford. You just don't want to admit it to yourself." He was right. The pieces had been falling into place since I'd first seen that Bentley. The wealth, the secrecy, the gunshot wound treated privately, the obvious power he wielded. Adrian Russo wasn't just rich. He was connected. The kind of connected that operated outside the law. "Will you join me for breakfast?" he asked, the question too polite to be anything but a command. I glanced at Sophia. "I should stay. Marco will watch her." On cue, the mountain of a driver appeared in the doorway. "He's been trained in basic medical care, and he'll call you if anything changes." I hesitated, then nodded. Marco took my place in the chair beside Sophia's bed, his massive frame somehow gentle as he adjusted her blanket. Adrian led me through the maze-like corridors of the mansion. Morning light poured through tall windows, illuminating artwork and antiques that belonged in museums. We passed closed doors and hushed voices that fell silent as we approached. Twice, men in suits nodded respectfully to Adrian, before their eyes flicked to me with undisguised curiosity. The dining room had a table large enough for 20, but places were set for only 2 at one end. A woman in a maid's uniform poured coffee as we entered, her eyes carefully downcast. "Sit," Adrian said, pulling out a chair for me. "You must be hungry." As if on cue, my stomach growled. I hadn't eaten since yesterday's hurried lunch at the hospital cafeteria. I sat, and Adrian took the place at the head of the table beside me. The maid set down plates of eggs, crisp bacon, fresh fruit, and warm pastries that made my mouth water. "Thank you, Elena," Adrian said. "That will be all." She nodded and slipped out silently, leaving us alone. I picked up my fork, then paused, suddenly suspicious of the food. Adrian noticed and sighed. "It's not drugged, Olivia. If I wanted to harm you, I wouldn't waste good food doing it." His casual dismissal of my fear was somehow more chilling than a threat would have been. I took a tentative bite of eggs, then another. Everything was delicious, and my hunger overcame my apprehension. We ate in silence for several minutes, before Adrian spoke again. "Tell me about yourself." I set down my coffee cup carefully. "You already know everything about me. That's why I'm here, isn't it?" The corner of his mouth lifted. "I know the facts. Education, employment, financial situation." "I don't know you. Why would you want to?" "Because you're in my home, caring for my sister." He leaned back, studying me. "Because you interest me." A warning prickle ran down my spine. "I'm not interesting, Mr. Russo. I'm just a nurse who made a desperate choice." "Adrian," he corrected. "And desperation doesn't explain everything. You could have gone to the police last night. You could have refused my offer." His eyes narrowed slightly. "You're not naive. You knew exactly what kind of man could make $300,000 of debt vanish. Yet here you are." I met his gaze steadily. "I'm here because my father died of pancreatic cancer after the insurance company refused to cover his experimental treatment. I'm here because I worked 3 jobs through nursing school and still graduated with student loans. I'm here because the American healthcare system is designed to keep people like me drowning in debt forever." I set my fork down with a soft clink. "So yes, I made a choice. But don't mistake it for complicity in whatever you do." Adrian's expression remained unreadable, but something shifted in his eyes. Respect, perhaps, or surprise. "Fair enough." He took a sip of his coffee. "Your father's debt will be cleared by the end of business today." Relief flooded through me, momentarily overwhelming my apprehension. "Thank you." He waved away my gratitude. "We had an agreement." He stood, signaling the end of breakfast. "You're confined to the East Wing for your safety. Sophia's room, your quarters, the small library, and this dining room. Attempts to explore beyond will be discouraged." I nodded, understanding the threat beneath his polite words. "Sophia will need physical therapy once she's stronger. You'll oversee that as well." He checked his watch. Platinum, I noticed, probably worth more than a year of my salary. "I have business to attend to. I'll check on Sophia this evening." As he turned to leave, I called after him. "Adrian?" He paused, looking back. How did Sophia really get shot? His expression hardened. She was in the wrong place at the wrong time. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. He strode from the room, leaving me alone with my cooling coffee and growing doubts. I returned to Sophia's room to find her awake and irritable. Marco vacated the chair as I entered, nodding respectfully before disappearing into the hallway. "Finally," Sophia huffed. "That man is about as conversational as a brick wall." I smiled despite myself. "He's just doing his job. How are you feeling?" Like I've been shot, she replied dryly. Where's my brother? He said he had business to attend to. Sophia rolled her eyes. Of course he does. She shifted, wincing. Help me sit up? I'm sick of staring at the ceiling. I adjusted her bed and checked her bandage, pleased to find no fresh bleeding. The wound looks good. You're lucky. It missed everything important. Luck had nothing to do with it, she muttered. He's a terrible shot. I pretended not to hear that as I recorded her vitals. Are you hungry? I can have something brought up. She shook her head. Not yet, just water. As I poured from the crystal carafe beside her bed, she studied me. So you're the new project, I frowned. Project? Adrian doesn't bring people here unless they serve a purpose, and you're not his usual type of employee. Her eyes, sharper now that the medication was wearing off, assessed me. You're too soft, too honest. I'm just a nurse doing a job, I said carefully. Sophia's laugh turned into a pained cough. Sure you are. And this is just a flesh wound, and Adrian is just a businessman. She took the water I offered, sipping slowly. You should know he always gets what he wants. Always. And what does he want with me? Her expression turned somber. I wish I knew. But my brother doesn't collect people by accident. She handed back the empty glass. Be careful, Olivia. Once Adrian decides you're his, he never lets go. A chill settled in my stomach. Before I could press further, Sophia's eyes fluttered closed, exhaustion reclaiming her. I tucked the blanket around her and retreated to the window, looking out over manicured gardens surrounded by a stone wall, topped with what I was certain was razor wire. Beyond that, dense forest stretched as far as I could see. I was trapped in a golden cage, with no idea where I was or what Adrian Russo really wanted from me. Days passed in a strange, tense routine. Sophia grew stronger, moving from bed to chair with my assistance. Adrian visited each morning and evening, bringing books for his sister, asking detailed questions about her progress, and watching me with those unreadable whiskey eyes. The more time I spent with him, the more layers I sensed beneath his controlled exterior, glimpses of dry humor, flashes of genuine tenderness toward Sophia, moments of unexpected consideration toward me. On the 5th night, I was reading in the small library when Adrian found me. He carried 2 crystal glasses of amber liquid, offering one to me as he took the seat opposite. Scotch, he said. Macallan, 25 years old. I accepted the glass but didn't drink. Is this a celebration? Sophia stood on her own today. That's worth acknowledging. He sipped his drink, eyes never leaving mine. You've done good work with her. It's my job. A job you've done exceptionally well, despite the circumstances. He leaned back, looking more relaxed than I'd seen him before. He'd discarded his suit jacket and tie, the top buttons of his shirt undone to reveal the strong column of his throat. Most people would have crumbled under the pressure. I'm used to pressure. I finally took a sip of the scotch, letting it burn a warm path down my throat. Emergency room, remember? That's different. Clinical pressure. This, he gestured vaguely, encompassing the situation, the house, himself. This is something else entirely. I set my glass down. Why am I really here, Adrian? There are plenty of private nurses who do this job without the kidnapping dramatics. You weren't kidnapped. You came willingly. Under duress. His mouth quirked. Semantics. He studied me for a long moment. The truth is, I needed someone without connections to my world. Someone who could be trusted with Sophia's care without being a liability. And how am I not a liability? I could go to the police the minute I leave here. You won't. His certainty chilled me, not just because I've upheld my end of our bargain, but because you're smart enough to know what would happen. The threat hung between us, unspoken but clear. I changed tactics. Who shot Sophia? His expression darkened. An enemy who's been dealt with. Is that why there are more guards around the property now? I've seen them from the windows. Adrian's eyebrows rose slightly, impressed or concerned by my observation. Yes. There have been developments. What kind of developments? The kind that don't concern you. He finished his scotch and stood. Get some rest, Olivia. Sophia starts physical therapy tomorrow, and she's not an easy patient. As he reached the door, I called after him. The debt collectors stopped calling. Thank you. He paused, looking back at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. I keep my promises, Olivia. Remember that. Long after he'd gone, I sat in the library, turning my glass between my fingers, wondering why his words felt less like reassurance and more like a warning. Sophia proved to be as difficult in physical therapy as Adrian had warned. Her determination was admirable, but her patience was non-existent. "I'm not an invalid," she snapped, gripping the parallel bars we'd had installed in her room, sweat beading on her forehead as she took another shaky step. "No one said you were," I replied calmly, staying close enough to catch her if she fell. "But a gunshot wound isn't something you can just power through." She shot me a glare that reminded me so much of her brother that I had to suppress a smile. "Adrian told me the same thing this morning. Are you two coordinating your lectures now?" "Your brother and I rarely agree on anything," I said dryly. "But when it comes to your recovery, we're on the same page." Sophia's mouth quirked as she reached the end of the bars and turned carefully. "He likes you, you know." She took another step, her knuckles white with effort. "I can tell." I kept my expression neutral. "He likes that I'm helping you recover." "No." Sophia shook her head, pausing to catch her breath. "Adrian doesn't like people. He uses them, pays them, sometimes even respects them. But he doesn't like them." She looked at me with those perceptive eyes. "He watches you when you're not looking." A shiver ran down my spine, but I ignored it. "Let's focus on your physical therapy, not your brother's people-watching habits." Sophia let out a small laugh that turned into a wince. Deflection. "Interesting." She took another step. "I haven't seen him this intrigued since—" She cut herself off abruptly. "Since what?" Her expression closed. "Nothing. Just family history." We completed the session in silence, and by the end, Sophia was exhausted but pleased with her progress. I helped her back to bed and checked her wound, which was healing nicely. "You should join us for dinner tonight," Sophia said as I recorded her vitals. I looked up in surprise. "Us?" "Adrian and me. He's arranged for us to eat in the small dining room instead of me being stuck in bed." She tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear. "It would be nice to have company that actually talks." The invitation felt significant somehow. In the week I'd been here, I'd always eaten alone in my room or with Sophia, never with Adrian outside of that first breakfast. "I don't think your brother would want—" "It was his suggestion," she interrupted, watching my reaction closely. My pulse quickened inexplicably. "Then I'll be there." "Good." She settled back against her pillows. "Wear something nice. There should be suitable options in your closet." I'd avoided the clothes Adrian had provided, sticking to the scrubs I'd found in my bathroom. The idea of wearing something he'd selected felt too intimate, too much like accepting my captivity. But tonight, curiosity overcame principle. In my room, I opened the closet to find an array of dresses, blouses, and slacks, all in my size, all expensive brands I'd never been able to afford. I selected a simple navy blue dress with 3/4 sleeves, modest yet flattering. The fabric felt luxurious against my skin, a dangerous reminder of the comforts this gilded cage provided. At precisely 7, Marco appeared to escort me to the small dining room, a cozy space compared to the formal dining hall, with a table set for 3 and a fireplace crackling in the corner. Adrian and Sophia were already there. Sophia seated in a wheelchair looking pale but determined, Adrian standing behind her in a charcoal suit that made his eyes seem even more intense. His gaze tracked me as I entered, lingering on the dress. "You look lovely, Olivia." "Thank you," I replied, feeling strangely self-conscious. "The dress fits perfectly." "Of course it does," Sophia said with a knowing smile. "Adrian's very thorough in his research." Adrian shot his sister a warning look before pulling out a chair for me. "Wine?" I nodded, and he poured a deep red into my glass. Our fingers brushed as he handed it to me, sending an unexpected jolt through my system that I blamed on nerves. Dinner was served by the same silent maid, Elena, who'd attended our breakfast days ago. The food was exquisite. Roasted duck with cherry reduction, truffle risotto, and vegetables so perfectly prepared they seemed sculpted rather than grown. As we ate, the conversation flowed more easily than I'd expected, with Sophia doing most of the talking, sharing childhood stories that painted a picture of their privileged but isolated upbringing. "Adrian was terrible," she laughed, recounting a prank he'd played on their tutor. "The poor man resigned on the spot. He was incompetent, Adrian replied, but there was fondness in his voice, and he talked down to you. So you replaced his cologne with fish oil? It made a point. I watched their interaction with fascination. In these moments, they seemed like any siblings sharing memories, not whatever dangerous people they truly were. When Sophia began to tire, Adrian called for Marco to take her back to her room. I should go with her, I said, starting to rise. She'll be fine for an hour, Adrian countered. Stay. Have dessert. It wasn't really a request. Once Sophia had been wheeled away, an uncomfortable silence fell between us. Adrian refilled our wine glasses and moved to the chair beside me, closer than he'd been during dinner. You've become fond of my sister, he observed. I nodded. She makes it easy. Sophia has always been the charming one. His mouth quirked into that not-quite smile. I got the other qualities. Like what? His eyes met mine over his wine glass. Ruthlessness, calculation, determination. Those don't sound like qualities to be proud of. They're qualities that keep us alive. He set his glass down. This world doesn't reward kindness, Olivia. It rewards strength and the willingness to use it. What world is that exactly? I asked, emboldened by the wine and the intimate setting. Because in the world I live in, people generally don't get shot or need private nurses hidden away in secret mansions. Adrian's expression hardened slightly. You live in that world too. You just don't see what's beneath the surface. He leaned forward, his voice dropping. The comfortable life you think exists is built on blood and power. The only difference between men like me and the ones you consider legitimate is that I don't pretend. And what are you, exactly? His eyes held mine. I think you've figured that out by now. I had, of course. The security, the wealth, the violence, the power. Adrian Russo was connected to organized crime. Probably ran it, based on the deference I'd seen from everyone around him. Does that frighten you? He asked, studying my reaction. Should it? Most people would say yes. I took a sip of wine, buying time to steady my voice. Most people haven't spent a week living in your house and treating your gunshot-wounded sister. Adrian laughed then, a genuine sound that transformed his face and sent an unexpected warmth through me. You continue to surprise me, Olivia Bedford. Is that why I'm here? For your entertainment? The laughter faded from his eyes, replaced by something more intense. You're here because I need you to be. For Sophia. Initially, yes. The implication in that single word, initially, hung between us, charged and dangerous. Adrian's gaze dropped briefly to my lips before returning to my eyes, and I felt a pull toward him that had nothing to do with fear or obligation. I stood abruptly, needing distance. I should check on Sophia. Adrian rose as well, moving with that liquid grace that made him seem like a predator even in the most mundane actions. Of course. He walked me to the door, standing close enough that I could smell his cologne and feel the heat radiating from his body. As I reached for the handle, his hand covered mine, warm and strong. Olivia. His voice was low, intimate. The circumstances of your arrival here were unconventional, but I want you to know that you're not a prisoner anymore. You're my guest. I looked up at him, trying to read the truth in those whiskey eyes. Then I can leave? His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. When Sophia has recovered fully. His fingers traced a light pattern on the back of my hand, but I hope you won't want to by then. Before I could respond, he lifted my hand and pressed his lips to my knuckles, a gesture so old-fashioned and unexpected that it left me speechless. He released me and stepped back, his expression once again unreadable. Good night, Olivia. I fled to Sophia's room, my heart hammering in my chest. She was already asleep, her breathing deep and regular, the monitors showing strong vitals. I checked her wound and adjusted her blankets, going through the motions of my job while my mind raced. What was happening to me? I'd come here under duress, essentially kidnapped to care for a criminal's wounded sister. I should be looking for ways to escape, not feeling this dangerous attraction to a man who represented everything I should despise. Yet as the days turned into a second week, I found myself looking forward to Adrian's visits. He began joining Sophia and me for physical therapy, then staying afterward to talk, sometimes about books. He was surprisingly well-read, sometimes about medicine. He asked intelligent questions about treatments and procedures. Sometimes about nothing at all. Just comfortable silence as we watched Sophia grow stronger. One afternoon, I found him alone in the library, staring out the window at the rain pelting the gardens. "Sophia's napping," I said, hesitating in the doorway. "I can come back later." He turned, and something in his expression made me pause. The controlled mask had slipped, revealing exhaustion and what looked almost like grief. "Stay," he said softly. "Please." I moved into the room, taking the chair opposite his by the window. "Is everything all right?" Adrian ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of discomposure. "There have been complications with business. The kind of complications that got Sophia shot." His eyes met mine, sharp despite his weariness. "Yes." I waited, expecting him to shut down the conversation as he always did when it veered toward his business. Instead, he sighed and continued. "My father built an empire on certain principles. Territory, respect, family above all." Adrian's gaze returned to the rain-lashed windows. "When he died, I inherited not just his business, but his enemies. Most fell in line when they saw I was my father's son." His mouth twisted. "Some needed convincing, and someone's not convinced. Someone thinks they can take what's mine." The coldness in his voice sent a shiver down my spine. They came for Sophia to send a message. They miscalculated. The quiet certainty in those last words made me think of bodies in shallow graves. I should have been horrified, but instead, I felt a twisted understanding. "She's your weak spot." Adrian looked at me, surprise flickering across his features before his expression closed again. "Family is both strength and vulnerability in my world." "Is that why you've never married, had children of your own?" The question was too personal, too presumptuous. I expected anger, but Adrian merely studied me with those penetrating eyes. "I haven't found someone worth the risk," he said finally. "Someone who could survive in this life and still remain—" He trailed off, searching for the word. "Human?" I suggested quietly. His mouth quirked in that almost smile. "Yes." We sat in silence for several minutes, the rain providing a soothing background rhythm. Adrian seemed lost in thought, and I took the opportunity to study him openly. The strong profile, the slight shadow of stubble along his jaw, the faint scar on his cheekbone. He was beautiful in the way dangerous things often are. A tiger, a storm, a fire. "You're staring," he said without looking at me. I didn't deny it. "I'm trying to reconcile the man who brings his sister fresh flowers every morning with the man who makes people disappear." Adrian turned to face me fully, his expression serious. "They're the same man, Olivia. The sooner you accept that, the easier things will be." "For who?" "For both of us." There it was again. That implication that whatever was happening between us mattered to him. It should have frightened me. Instead, it sent a thrill of something dangerously like anticipation through my veins. The next morning, I woke to shouting. I rushed from my room to find Sophia's door open and the room filled with Adrian's men. Adrian himself stood by the bed, his face a mask of cold fury, as a doctor I'd never seen before examined Sophia. "What happened?" I pushed through the crowd to Sophia's side. Her face was flushed, her breathing labored, the monitors showing elevated heart rate and temperature. "She has a fever," Adrian snapped, as if I were responsible. "Why didn't you notice?" I checked Sophia quickly, finding the wound site red and hot to the touch. "It's infected. She needs IV antibiotics immediately." I turned to the doctor. "Do you have ceftriaxone?" The man nodded, already preparing the medication. I helped administer it while Adrian paced behind us, radiating tension. When we finished, I turned to the room. Everyone out except the doctor. My professional tone brooked no argument. To my surprise, the men looked to Adrian, who gave a curt nod. They filed out silently, leaving just the four of us. "You too, Adrian," I said, earning a glare that would have made most people quail. "She's my sister, and right now she needs medical attention, not an audience." I held his gaze steadily. "Please." For a tense moment, I thought he would refuse. Then, with a barely perceptible nod, he left, closing the door behind him. The doctor, Dr. Mendez, as he introduced himself, and I worked together to clean the wound, which had developed a small abscess that had gone unnoticed beneath the bandage. After draining and re-cleaning it, we started Sophia on a stronger course of antibiotics. "She'll be fine," Dr. Mendez assured me as we finished. "You caught it early enough." "I should have noticed sooner," I said, the guilt weighing on me. I'd been so distracted by Adrian, by my conflicted feelings, that I'd missed the early signs of infection. These things happen quickly sometimes. He packed his bag, then hesitated. "You're not what I expected." "What do you mean?" "Adrian doesn't usually—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "He keeps people at a distance, especially in his home." Before I could respond, the door opened and Adrian returned, his face still tight with worry. Dr. Mendez nodded respectfully and slipped out, leaving us alone with the sleeping Sophia. "Will she be all right?" Adrian asked, his voice rough. "Yes. The infection is under control. She'll need to rest for a few days, but there shouldn't be any complications." The tension seemed to drain from his body, leaving him looking almost vulnerable. Without thinking, I reached out and touched his arm. "It's not your fault." His eyes met mine, surprise evident in them. "I wasn't there to protect her. You can't be everywhere. I should have been there," he insisted. "If I had been, she wouldn't have been shot. If you hadn't been here when the infection developed." He didn't finish the thought, but the implication was clear. "But I was here," I said softly. "Because you brought me here." Something shifted in his expression, and he covered my hand with his own. "Yes." The single word contained multitudes. Acknowledgement, gratitude, something deeper I wasn't ready to name. We stood like that for a long moment, connected by touch and shared concern for Sophia. Then Adrian's phone buzzed in his pocket, breaking the spell. He checked it, his expression hardening into the mask I recognized from our first meeting. "I have to go." He looked at Sophia, then back at me. "Stay with her." "I will." He moved to leave, then paused at the door. "Olivia." His voice was soft but intense. "Thank you." The words seemed inadequate for the emotion behind them. Before I could respond, he was gone, leaving me alone with Sophia and the growing realization that I was falling for a man who lived by his own dangerous code, a man who had, essentially, kidnapped me. And the most terrifying part was that I no longer wanted to escape. Sophia's infection marked a turning point. Adrian became a constant presence in her room, working remotely from a laptop while I tended to his sister. The carefully maintained distance between us began to erode, replaced by a quiet intimacy born of shared concern. "Her fever's down," I said on the third morning, checking Sophia's vitals while Adrian watched from his now permanent place in the corner armchair. "She seems more comfortable," he observed, setting aside his laptop to join me at the bedside. Sophia was sleeping peacefully, her color improved, the angry redness around her wound receding. I changed her IV bag, acutely aware of Adrian standing close enough that his arm brushed mine. "You saved her life," he said quietly. "Again." I shook my head. "I just did my job." "No." His hand closed gently around my wrist, turning me to face him. "A job is what people do for money. This was more." His eyes searched mine, intense and vulnerable in a way I'd never seen before. "You care about her." "Of course I do." I couldn't look away from his gaze. "Sophia makes it easy to care." "And me?" The question was barely audible, a dangerous whisper between us. "Do you care about me too, Olivia?" My heart thundered in my chest. We stood on a precipice, and my answer would send us tumbling into territory from which there would be no return. The truth rose to my lips before I could stop it. "Yes." The word hung between us, raw and honest. Adrian's eyes darkened, and his hand slid from my wrist to intertwine with my fingers. He stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the heat from his body, smell the subtle cologne that had become as familiar to me as my own heartbeat. "Adrian," I whispered, uncertain if it was a warning or an invitation. He leaned in, his free hand rising to cup my cheek with unexpected tenderness. I should have pulled away, Every rational part of my brain screamed that this was madness. Stockholm Syndrome, trauma bonding, a dozen psychological terms to explain away what I was feeling. But as his lips hovered a breath from mine, I couldn't remember any of those reasons. A soft moan from Sophia shattered the moment. We both turned to see her stirring, eyes fluttering open. Adrian stepped back, his mask of control sliding back into place so quickly I might have imagined its absence. "You're awake," he said, moving to his sister's side with casual ease, as if he hadn't just been about to kiss me. "How do you feel?" Sophia's gaze moved between us, her expression knowing despite her weakened state. "Better," she rasped. "What did I interrupt?" "Nothing," we said in unison too quickly. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "Liars." I busied myself checking her temperature and pulse, avoiding both their eyes. "Your fever's broken. That's good news." "Wonderful," Sophia said dryly. "Now, maybe you two can stop hovering like vultures and admit what's happening." Adrian shot her a warning look. "You need to rest." "I've been resting for days." She struggled to sit up, and I moved to help her, adjusting pillows behind her back. "What I need is for you two to stop pretending." "Sophia," Adrian's voice held a quiet command. "Enough." She rolled her eyes but subsided, too weak to argue further. I seized the opportunity to escape the suddenly charged atmosphere. "I'll get you some broth," I said, heading for the door. "You need to eat something." In the hallway, I leaned against the wall, eyes closed, trying to steady my breathing. What was I doing? Whatever was developing between Adrian and me could only end badly. He was a criminal, possibly a killer, who had essentially forced me into his home. The fact that I no longer felt like a prisoner didn't change how I'd arrived. Yet I couldn't deny the truth of what I'd admitted to him. I did care. More than care. The attraction I felt went beyond physical desire. It was a pull toward something essential in him. The core of steel and vulnerability beneath the dangerous exterior. I collected myself and went to the kitchen, where Elena was already preparing a tray with soup and tea. She smiled shyly as I entered, one of the few staff members who'd warmed to my presence. "For Miss Sophia," she said in accented English. "Mr. Russo said she is better today." "Yes, much better." I returned her smile, grateful for the normality of the exchange. "I can take it up. There is lunch for you and Mr. Russo also," she added, nodding to a second covered tray. The implication that Adrian and I would eat together sent another wave of confusion through me. How easily I'd slipped into this strange domestic arrangement, as if having lunch with a mafia boss while caring for his gunshot-wounded sister was the most natural thing in the world. I returned to find Sophia dozing again, and Adrian on the phone, speaking rapidly in what sounded like Italian. His voice was hard, commanding, so different from the gentleness he'd shown moments ago. He ended the call when he saw me, his expression unreadable once more. "Soup for the invalid," I said lightly, setting the tray beside Sophia's bed, and apparently lunch for us. Adrian nodded, helping me arrange the small table by the window. We ate in silence, the almost kiss hanging unacknowledged between us. Finally, he spoke. "We need to talk about what happens when Sophia is fully recovered." My stomach tightened. "You mean when I leave?" His eyes met mine. "Do you want to leave?" The question was loaded with unspoken implications. I stared down at my half-eaten sandwich, buying time. "I don't know. You could stay," he said, his voice careful, controlled. "I could use someone with your skills. The position would be well compensated, of course." The clinical offer stung more than it should have. "As your personal nurse," a muscle ticked in his jaw, "as whatever you want to be, Olivia." I looked up sharply, searching his face for meaning. "And if what I want doesn't align with your plans?" "My plans have changed since I met you." The admission seemed to cost him something. "Adrian Russo wasn't a man accustomed to changing course for anyone. Because you care about me too?" I pressed, needing to hear it. His expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Because you've become important." It wasn't a declaration of love, but from a man like Adrian it might as well have been. Still, I needed clarity. "Important how?" I set down my fork. "As an employee? A possession? Another person under your protection and control? Adrian's eyes narrowed. Is that what you think? That I want to control you? I think you control everything and everyone around you. It's who you are. I held his gaze steadily. But I won't be owned, Adrian, not even by you. Something dangerous flashed across his features, then receded, replaced by grudging respect. No, he said quietly. You wouldn't be. Before I could respond, a commotion erupted in the hallway, raised voices, heavy footsteps. Adrian was on his feet instantly, positioning himself between me and the door, hand reaching inside his jacket for what I was certain was a gun. The door burst open to reveal Marco, his normally impassive face tight with urgency. Boss, we have a situation. Perimeter breach on the east side. Adrian's demeanor changed completely. The almost vulnerable man replaced by someone cold and lethal. How many? At least 6. Heavily armed. Lock down the house. Full security protocol. Adrian turned to me, his expression grim. Stay with Sophia. Lock the door. Do not open it for anyone but me or Marco. Fear clawed at my throat. Adrian, what's happening? Remember what I told you about enemies? He moved to Sophia, who had awakened at the commotion, her face pale with understanding. They've found us. He pressed a quick kiss to his sister's forehead, then straightened, his eyes meeting mine. Keep her safe. With that, he was gone, Marco at his heels, the door closing firmly behind them. I rushed to lock it, then turned to Sophia, who was struggling to sit up. You need to stay calm, I said, medical training kicking in despite my own panic. Your body can't handle stress right now. Help me up, she insisted. We need to get to the panic room. What? No. Adrian said to stay here. Adrian doesn't know how bad it is. Sophia's eyes were wide with fear. These aren't ordinary rivals. It's the Moretti family. They won't stop until we're dead. I hesitated, torn between Adrian's instructions and Sophia's obvious terror. You're in no condition to move. I'm in worse condition if they find me in this bed. She grabbed my arm with surprising strength. Please, Olivia, trust me. The desperation in her voice convinced me. I quickly disconnected her IV, helped her into a robe, and supported her weight as she stood shakily. Where is this panic room? Behind the bookcase in Adrian's study. Sophia leaned heavily against me as we moved to the door. 2 doors down on the left. I unlocked the door and peered into the hallway. It was empty, but I could hear shouting and what sounded like gunfire from somewhere deeper in the house. My heart hammered against my ribs as I helped Sophia into the corridor, her arm draped over my shoulders, her body trembling with effort. We had just reached Adrian's study when a man appeared at the end of the hallway. Not one of Adrian's guards, but a stranger with cold eyes and a gun in his hand. He spotted us and raised his weapon. Without thinking, I yanked Sophia through the study door and slammed it shut, hearing the thud of bullets embedding in wood mere seconds later. The bookcase, Sophia gasped, pointing to the far wall. Pull the red book, 3rd shelf, center. I half-dragged her across the room, frantically scanning the shelves until I found the book. A red-bound copy of The Art of War. Fitting. I pulled it, and a section of the bookcase clicked, swinging inward to reveal a small, steel-reinforced room. We tumbled inside just as the study door splintered open. I slammed the panic room door shut, the automatic locks engaging with a reassuring series of clicks. Sophia collapsed onto a small cot against the wall, her face ashen, the exertion clearly too much for her weakened state. There's a medical kit, she wheezed, pointing to a cabinet, and a monitor. We can see what's happening. I grabbed the medical kit and checked Sophia's vitals. Rapid pulse, clammy skin, but no sign of reopened wounds. As I worked, I glanced at the monitor she'd indicated. It displayed feeds from security cameras throughout the house, showing scenes that turned my blood cold. Adrian's men were engaged in a firefight with the intruders. Real, brutal violence, nothing like the sanitized versions I'd seen in movies. I watched in horror as a body fell, then another, blood pooling on the marble floors I'd walked across just hours before. Then I saw Adrian. He moved with lethal precision, his face a mask of cold fury as he dispatched an attacker with a single shot. This wasn't the man who'd brought Sophia fresh flowers, who'd almost kissed me with such tenderness. This was someone else entirely, a predator in his element. He's protecting what's his, Sophia said softly, following my gaze. This is the world we live in, Olivia. This is who we are. I couldn't tear my eyes from the screen as Adrian worked his way methodically through the house, clearly searching for something. Or someone. With a jolt, I realized he was looking for us. We need to let him know we're safe, I said, turning to Sophia. Is there a way to communicate from here? She nodded weakly. Phone on the desk. Speed dial 1. I grabbed the phone and pressed the button. It rang only once before Adrian answered, his voice tight with controlled panic. Sophia? It's Olivia. We're in the panic room. Sophia's with me. The relief in his exhale was palpable. Stay there. Don't open the door for anyone but me. Understand? Yes. I hesitated. Adrian, be careful. A brief pause. I will. The line went dead. I returned to Sophia's side, checking her pulse again. The stress and exertion had taken a toll. Her fever was returning. I administered medication from the well-stocked medical kit and settled her more comfortably on the cot, all while keeping one eye on the monitors. The fighting continued for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Gradually, Adrian's men gained the upper hand. I watched as the last of the intruders was subdued, Adrian standing over him, gun pointed at the man's head. They exchanged words I couldn't hear, and for a terrible moment, I thought Adrian would execute him on the spot. Instead, he gestured to Marco, who hauled the man to his feet. Adrian said something else, his expression coldly furious, then turned and began moving swiftly through the house, clearly heading for the study. He's coming, I told Sophia, who nodded weakly, her eyelids drooping from the medication. Moments later, there was a pattern of knocks on the panic room door, followed by Adrian's voice. Olivia? Sophia? It's me. It's over. I hesitated, checking the monitor to confirm it was really him standing alone outside. Then I released the locks and opened the door. Adrian stood there, blood splattered across his shirt and face. Not his own, I realized with a mixture of relief and horror. His eyes swept over me, checking for injuries, then moved to Sophia on the cot. You moved her, he said, not accusingly, just stating a fact. She insisted, said it wasn't safe to stay in her room. I stepped back to let him enter. Was she right? Adrian knelt beside his sister, brushing hair from her forehead with a gentleness that contrasted sharply with the violence I'd just witnessed. Yes. They were coming for her, for both of us. He looked up at me, his expression somber. For you too, now. The implications of that statement hit me like a physical blow. Me? Why? Because you're with me. He stood, closing the distance between us, his hands coming to rest on my shoulders. Because they saw you in the house with Sophia. That makes you part of this now. I shook my head, denial rising in my throat. I'm just a nurse. I'm not part of your world. Adrian's grip tightened slightly. You became part of it the moment you stepped into my car, Olivia. His eyes held mine, intense and unyielding. And now there's no going back. Not after what happened today. The reality of my situation crashed over me like a wave. Even if I left now, I'd never be truly safe. I knew too much, had seen too much. And more than that, I'd become important to Adrian Russo, which made me a target for his enemies. What happens now? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. We move, Adrian said simply. This location is compromised. He glanced at Sophia. As soon as she's stable enough to travel. Where? Somewhere safer. He reached up to brush a strand of hair from my face, his touch incongruously gentle given the blood still drying on his skin. You'll come with us. It wasn't a question, but it wasn't quite a command either. It was an assumption. A certainty that our paths were now irreversibly linked, and the most terrifying realization was that I wanted to go with him, wanted to stay in his world despite everything I'd just witnessed. Yes, I said quietly. I will. Something flickered in his eyes, relief, gratitude, something deeper I still couldn't name. Then he leaned forward and pressed his lips to my forehead, a kiss that felt like both a promise and a claim. I'll protect you, he murmured against my skin. Always. I should have been repulsed by the blood on his clothes, by the violence I'd witnessed, by the danger he represented. Instead, I found myself leaning into his touch, accepting the protection he offered, knowing it came with chains I might never be able to break. Sophia stirred on the cot, her eyes opening to see us standing so close. A weak smile touched her lips. "About time," she murmured, before drifting back to sleep. Adrian's mouth quirked in that almost smile I'd come to recognize. Then he stepped back, his expression turning serious again. "We need to move her back to her room for now. The house is secure, but we'll leave at first light." Together we carried Sophia back to her bedroom, which had mercifully been untouched by the violence. As I reconnected her IV and checked her vitals, Adrian made phone calls, his voice low and commanding as he arranged our departure. When I finished with Sophia, I turned to find Adrian watching me, his expression unreadable once more. "You should rest," he said. "Tomorrow will be a long day. I should stay with Sophia. Marco will watch her." As if on cue, the large man appeared in the doorway. "You need sleep." Too exhausted to argue, I nodded and headed for my room. Adrian followed, walking so close behind me that I could feel his presence like a physical touch. At my door, I turned to face him. "You should clean up," I said, gesturing to the blood on his shirt. "And let me check you for injuries." He shook his head. "It's not my blood." The clinical part of my brain noted the statement with professional detachment. The rest of me struggled to reconcile this blood-spattered man with the one who'd almost kissed me with such tenderness hours earlier. As if reading my thoughts, Adrian's expression softened. "This is who I am, Olivia. What you saw today, it's part of me. I won't pretend otherwise. I know. And I did know, had known from the beginning, even if I'd tried to ignore it. And yet you're still here." He stepped closer, one hand coming up to cut my face. "Why?" The question demanded honesty, not just from him, but from myself. "Because I care about you," I said softly. "God help me, but I do." Something fierce and possessive flashed in his eyes. Then, finally, he kissed me. His lips were firm yet gentle, the kiss a question and a claim all at once. I should have pushed him away, should have remembered the violence I'd just witnessed, the blood still on his clothes. Instead, I found myself responding, my hands gripping his shirt, pulling him closer. The kiss deepened, grew hungry, months of tension and attraction igniting between us. Adrian pressed me against the door, his body solid and warm against mine, his hands tangling in my hair as he devoured my mouth with a possessiveness that should have frightened me but only made me want more. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes were dark with desire and something that looked almost like wonder. "Olivia," he murmured, his voice rough, "you have no idea how long I've wanted to do that. I should have had regrets, second thoughts, moral qualms. Instead, I found myself saying, 'Show me again.'" His smile, a real one this time, transforming his face, was the last thing I saw before he captured my lips once more, sealing a pact neither of us had expected to make when I first entered his world. In that moment, I knew I'd crossed a line from which there was no return. Adrian Russo had kidnapped me to save his sister, but somewhere along the way, I'd surrendered something far more valuable than my freedom. I'd given him my heart. Dawn broke with a cold gray light filtering through the curtains of my room. I woke disoriented, memories of the previous day rushing back. The attack, the panic room, Adrian's kiss. Especially Adrian's kiss. My fingers touched my lips, still tender from his intensity. A soft knock at the door jolted me fully awake. I pulled on a robe and opened it to find Elena with a tray of coffee and a grim expression. "Mr. Russo says to hurry," she said quietly. "Cars leave in 30 minutes. I thanked her and took the coffee, sipping it as I quickly showered and dressed in clothes I found laid out for me. Practical dark jeans, a cashmere sweater, and sturdy boots. A small duffel bag sat by the door, presumably packed with essentials. The efficiency of it all was both comforting and unnerving. When I emerged, Adrian was waiting in the hallway, looking immaculate in a charcoal suit despite the early hour and the chaos of the previous day. The only hint of strain was the tightness around his eyes. "Good morning," he said, his voice formal, giving nothing away of the intimacy we'd shared hours before. "Morning." I searched his face, trying to gauge his mood. "How's Sophia?" "Stable. The doctor checked her an hour ago." He gestured for me to follow him. "She'll travel in the medical transport with Dr. Mendez. You and I will take the lead car." As we walked, I noticed the house had been immaculately cleaned. No evidence remained of yesterday's violence, no bullet holes, no blood on the marble floors. It was as if it had never happened, a detail that disturbed me more than the actual fighting had. Outside, a convoy of black SUVs waited, engines running. Armed men stood at strategic points around the property, their expressions vigilant. At the center of the driveway was a vehicle that looked like an ambulance but was clearly armored and customized. Adrian guided me to the first SUV, his hand at the small of my back. The familiarity of his touch sent warmth spreading through me, despite the tension of the situation. Marco opened the door, and Adrian helped me inside before sliding in beside me. "Where are we going?" I asked as the convoy began to move. "Somewhere safe." He took my hand, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. "It's better if you don't know the details yet." I pulled my hand away, suddenly irritated by the secrecy. "Don't do that." Adrian raised an eyebrow. "Do what?" "Treat me like I'm just another person to be managed." I met his gaze steadily. "After last night, after everything, I deserve honesty." A muscle ticked in his jaw, but his eyes softened. "You're right." He glanced out the window as we passed through the estate's gates, then back to me. "We're going to my property in the mountains. It's more remote, better defended, and not connected to the Russo name. How long will we stay there?" "Until I eliminate the threat." The clinical detachment in his voice sent a chill through me, a reminder of who he really was. "You mean until you kill the people who came after you?" Adrian studied me, gauging my reaction. "Yes." I looked away, staring out the window at the landscape rushing by. We'd left the city far behind, moving through countryside I didn't recognize. Part of me wanted to demand he stop the car, to run back to my simple life of hospital shifts and ramen dinners. But there was no going back now. I'd made my choice when I kissed him, when I agreed to come with him. "This is your world," I said finally. "I understand that, but if I'm going to be part of it, I need to know what I'm walking into." Adrian was silent for a long moment. Then he shifted closer, his thigh pressing against mine. "The Moretti family has been trying to take over Russo territory for years. My father kept them in check. When he died, they saw an opportunity." His mouth tightened. "They miscalculated. I'm not my father. I'm worse." "Why target Sophia?" "To hurt me. To show they could reach what I value most." His eyes locked with mine, intent and serious. "They'll come for you next, now that they've seen you with us, with me." The implication hung between us. I was a liability, a weakness that could be exploited. "Is that why you kissed me? To stake your claim?" Anger flashed across his features. "I kissed you because I've wanted to since the moment you stood up to me in your hospital scrubs, exhausted but unflinching." His hand caught mine again, gripping it firmly. "I've surrounded myself with people who fear me, Olivia. You never did." The raw honesty in his voice stripped away my defenses. "I should have." "Perhaps." His mouth quirked in that almost smile. "But I'm grateful you didn't." We rode in silence for a while, his hand still holding mine, both of us lost in thought. The convoy wound through increasingly mountainous terrain, the road narrowing as we climbed. Finally, we turned onto a private drive that snaked up through dense forest. The house, more of a fortress, appeared suddenly through the trees. Built of stone and glass, it seemed to grow from the mountainside itself, commanding a view of the valley below. Unlike Adrian's mansion, this place was designed for security rather than opulence, though it still radiated wealth and power. Armed guards met us as we pulled up, their respectful nods to Adrian contrasting with their curious glances at me. The medical transport arrived moments later, and I shifted immediately into nurse mode, helping transfer Sophia to a room that had been converted into a state-of-the-art medical suite. "She's doing well considering," Dr. Mendez told me as we settled her. "The infection is responding to antibiotics. With proper rest, she should make a full recovery." I nodded, checking Sophia's vitals myself. She was sedated for the journey, but breathing easily, her color better than it had been. "Thank you for coming with us. When Adrian Russo asks for your help, saying no isn't an option." He smiled tightly. But in this case, I'm glad to be of service. Sophia is a good person. I glanced at him curiously. How long have you known them? Since they were children. His expression softened with memory. Their father was my patient first, then the whole family. Adrian was always so serious, even as a boy, so determined to protect everyone. He checked Sophia's IV, then looked at me. He's different with you, you know. Different how? Gentler. More human. Dr. Mendez patted my shoulder as he moved past me. That's rare in his world. Hold on to it if you can. Before I could respond, Adrian entered the room, his presence immediately commanding attention. How is she? Stable and comfortable, I reported, slipping back into professional detachment. The journey didn't worsen her condition. He nodded, satisfied. Good. He turned to Dr. Mendez. Thank you, doctor. Marco will show you to your quarters. I need a moment with Nurse Bedford. The doctor exited discreetly, leaving us alone with the sleeping Sophia. Adrian moved to stand beside me at her bedside, his shoulder brushing mine. She looks peaceful, he observed quietly. The sedation will wear off soon. She'll probably be disoriented at first. Adrian nodded, then surprised me by taking my hand. Come with me. There's something I need to show you. Curious, I followed him through the house, noting the security features disguised as architectural elements, cameras hidden in light fixtures, reinforced windows, strategic sightlines. Adrian led me up a spiral staircase to what appeared to be his private study, a room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the valley and mountains beyond. This is where I come to think, he said, moving to a desk position to face the view. To plan. I stayed by the door, watching as he unlocked a drawer and removed a thick folder. What is that? Your future. He held out the folder. If you want it. Cautiously, I approached and took it from him. Inside were legal documents, property deeds, bank accounts, identification papers, all in my name. I looked up in confusion. I don't understand. Adrian leaned against the desk, his expression serious. When I first brought you to my home, it was for Sophia. But I always had a contingency plan. He gestured to the folder. A new identity, financial security, a fresh start. Somewhere the Moretti family would never find you. You were planning to let me go? The realization stunned me. I was planning to give you a choice, he corrected. The same choice I'm giving you now. I flipped through the documents, noting the substantial bank balance, the property in a quiet coastal town thousands of miles away. Why show me this now? Adrian pushed away from the desk and moved to the window, his back to me. Because last night changed things. For both of us. He turned, his eyes meeting mine. I want you to stay, Olivia. With me, but I need you to choose it freely, knowing you have other options. The gesture was unexpectedly honorable from a man who lived outside the law. I set the folder down and crossed to him, searching his face. You'd really let me walk away, after everything that's happened? It would be difficult. His jaw tightened. But yes, if that's what you truly wanted. I studied him, this complicated man who had kidnapped me, protected me, kissed me like I was precious. Why? Because cages, even golden ones, destroy what I find most valuable about you. He reached up to brush a strand of hair from my face. Your spirit, your independence, your refusal to be intimidated, even by me. The admission touched something deep inside me. And if I choose to stay, what then? Then you become part of my world. His hand cupped my cheek, with all the protection, privilege, and danger that entails. As what? Your nurse? Your girlfriend? Your possession? Adrian's eyes darkened. As my equal. My partner. He stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. My wife. Eventually, if you'll have me. The word sent a shock through my system. Wife? Adrian, we barely know each other. I know everything I need to know about you. His certainty was absolute. You're brave, compassionate, and fiercely independent. You care for others at your own expense. You see the world as it should be, not just as it is. His thumb traced my bottom lip, and when you kiss me, it feels like coming home. My heart hammered in my chest, emotions warring within me, fear, desire, confusion, and something dangerously close to love. Your world is violent, Dangerous. Yes. People die. Yes. And you? What exactly do you do in this world of yours? Adrian considered me for a long moment. I control a network of businesses, some legitimate, some not. I protect my territory and my people. I maintain order in a world that operates by different rules than the one you're used to. You kill people. When necessary. He didn't flinch from the truth. I'm not a good man, Olivia, but I could be a good husband to you. A good father to our children? The image his words conjured, a family with Adrian, children with his whiskey eyes and my stubborn chin, was startlingly appealing. It's insane, I whispered. All of this. Perhaps. His mouth quirked. But I've never wanted anything the way I want a life with you. I stepped back, needing space to think. I need time, Adrian. This is overwhelming. He nodded, respecting my boundary. Of course. Take all the time you need. He gestured to the folder still on his desk. The option to leave will always be there. I want you to stay because you choose to, not because you feel trapped. The irony wasn't lost on me. The man who had essentially kidnapped me now offering me freedom, while simultaneously asking me to chain myself to him willingly. Yet the choice felt genuine, his vulnerability in offering it unexpectedly touching. A commotion from downstairs interrupted the moment. Raised voices, rapid footsteps. Adrian's expression shifted instantly from tender to alert, his hand moving to the gun I hadn't noticed holstered under his jacket. Stay here, he ordered, moving to the door. Adrian. Please, Olivia. For once, just do as I ask. The genuine concern in his voice stopped my protest. I nodded, and he slipped out, locking the door behind him. Left alone, I moved to the window, searching the grounds below for signs of trouble but seeing only the usual guards at their posts. Minutes stretched like hours. I paced the study, my mind racing with possibilities. Had the Moretti family found us already? Was Sophia all right? The isolation that had seemed protective now felt suffocating. Finally, the door opened, and Adrian returned. The tension in his shoulders told me something was wrong before he spoke. The Moretti family has taken Gemma. I frowned, not recognizing the name. Who? Elena's daughter. Adrian's expression was grim. They left a message, her for Sophia, an exchange. Horror flooded through me. They kidnapped a child? To get to you? To get to Sophia. He ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of agitation. They know I won't trade my sister, so they're hoping to force my hand through Elena. His eyes met mine. She's been with my family since I was a child. Her daughter is like family to us. What will you do? Adrian's expression hardened into something deadly. What I should have done when they first came after us. End this. Permanently. The cold certainty in his voice sent a shiver down my spine. This was the other side of Adrian, the ruthless crime lord who eliminated threats without remorse. There has to be another way, I said quietly. One that doesn't involve more bloodshed. This is my world, Olivia. Blood is its currency. He moved to a cabinet, unlocking it to reveal an array of weapons. I've tried to shield you from this reality, but I can't anymore. I watched as he selected a gun, checking it with practiced efficiency. Let me help. Adrian paused, looking at me sharply. No, you stay here, protected. I'm a nurse, Adrian. I can help if anyone gets hurt. I moved closer, determination strengthening my voice. And if I'm going to be part of your world, I need to understand all of it. Not just the parts you want to show me. He studied me for a long moment, conflict clear in his eyes. This isn't a game, Olivia. People will die tonight. I know. I held his gaze steadily, but innocent lives are at stake. Elena's daughter deserves our help. All of our help. Something shifted in his expression. Respect, perhaps, or realization. All right, he said finally. But you stay with Marco at all times. You focus on medical assistance only. And if I tell you to leave, you leave. No questions, no arguments. I nodded, accepting his terms. What's the plan? Adrian outlined the strategy. A team would infiltrate the Moretti compound where Gemma was being held while another group created a diversion. The goal was extraction of the child with minimal casualties on our side. Our side, I repeated, the words strange on my tongue. When had I started thinking of myself as part of Adrian's organization? Having second thoughts? He asked, noting my hesitation. No. And surprisingly, it was true. I'm where I need to be. The operation unfolded with military precision. I remained in a secure location with Marco and a medical kit, while Adrian led the infiltration team. Through a radio, I listened to terse updates, my heart in my throat each time gunfire erupted in the background. Then finally, Adrian's voice. "We have her. Coming out now." Relief flooded through me, followed quickly by renewed tension as I prepared for potential injuries. When the team returned, Adrian carried a small dark-haired girl of about 7, her face streaked with tears but otherwise unharmed. Elena rushed forward with a cry, gathering her daughter into her arms. Adrian himself had a gash along his forearm, blood seeping through his torn sleeve. I moved to him immediately, medical instincts overriding everything else. "It's nothing," he said, trying to wave me off. "Let me be the judge of that." I led him to a chair and cut away his sleeve, revealing a deep cut that would need stitches. As I cleaned the wound, I asked quietly, "The Moretti family?" "Dealt with." His voice was flat, emotionless. "Permanently." I nodded, not pressing for details I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Instead, I focused on stitching his arm, my hands steady, despite the implications of his words. When I finished, Adrian caught my wrist, his eyes searching mine. "Are you all right?" The question surprised me. "Shouldn't I be asking you that? You just witnessed the darkest part of my world." His expression was somber. The violence, the consequences. "I saw you rescue an innocent child at risk to yourself," I countered, resting my hand on his. "That tells me something about you too, Adrian." He studied me, his eyes unreadable. "And your decision? Stay or go?" The question hung between us, weighted with potential futures. I thought of the folder in his study, the escape route he'd provided, the safe, normal life I could have, away from violence and danger. Then I looked at Adrian, complicated, dangerous, honorable in his own way, and somehow essential to me now. "I stay," I said quietly. "With you." The tension drained from his body, relief, and something deeper replacing it. He pulled me into his arms, heedless of his wounded arm, and kissed me with a passion that left no doubt about his feelings. "I love you," he murmured against my lips. "I think I have since the night you stood in the rain outside that hospital, defying me even as you considered my offer." The words washed over me, unexpected, yet somehow inevitable. "I love you too," I whispered back, the truth of it resonating through me. God help me, but I do. 3 months later, Sophia stood beside me in a secluded garden at Adrian's mountain property, adjusting the simple white dress I'd chosen for the occasion. Her recovery had been complete, leaving only a small scar as evidence of her ordeal. "Nervous?" she asked, smiling as she tucked a flower into my hair. "A little." I smoothed the silk of my dress. "It's not every day a girl marries a mafia boss." Sophia laughed. "True. But it's not every day a mafia boss finds someone who sees all of him and loves him anyway." She squeezed my hand. "You saved him, you know. Not just me. We saved each other." I looked toward the small gathering waiting under an arbor of white roses. Trusted members of Adrian's organization, Dr. Mendez, Elena and her daughter Gemma, who would be our flower girl. And there, at the center, stood Adrian, breathtaking in a black suit, his eyes fixed on me with an intensity that still made my heart race. He'd changed in the months since I'd agreed to stay. Not fundamentally, for he would always be the man who protected what was his with lethal efficiency. But he'd opened his world to me, included me in decisions, respected my boundaries and opinions. In turn, I'd adapted to his life, finding unexpected purpose in caring for his people, in building a clinic for those who couldn't seek traditional medical help, in loving a man who lived by his own complex code of honor. As Sophia prepared to walk me down the aisle, a role she'd insisted on, I reflected on the strange journey that had brought me here. From a desperate nurse drowning in debt, to the soon-to-be wife of one of the most powerful men in the criminal underworld. It wasn't a fairy tale, not exactly. There was too much blood, too many hard truths, too much danger still lurking at the edges. But as I took my first step toward Adrian, seeing his eyes warm with love and pride, I knew I'd made the right choice. He had kidnapped me. Yes. But in the process, I'd found not just a protector or a partner, but a home. Adrian took my hands as I reached him, his touch gentle yet possessive. "Ready?" he murmured. I smiled up at him. All doubt vanished. "Ready." As we exchanged vows under the clear blue sky, I understood the truth that had been forming since that rainy night outside the hospital. Adrian Russo had indeed kidnapped me. But I had stolen something far more valuable in return. I had stolen his heart, and I would guard it fiercely, just as he protected mine, for all the days to come.